We will now then start with the first step implementations. We will do this for the steps that are involved with authentication, and we will do this in a separate steps implementation file, because these are going to be used by all the other behaviors too, all the other features. Okay, so the idea is that we are going to create a Python file in the steps, feature steps folder, authentication, that has the implementation for these particular steps connected with authentication that we have seen so far. The one creating a user and one performing the login. We can also do this, preparing this file directly from the user interface, just by clicking in any of the steps that are not yet implemented. We'll have here support by PyCharm to create this step definition. Now here is asking us in what file we want to create it. Now the default is to use the same name as the feature, but in this case, and it's what we are going to use usually. But in this case, because we are doing this for just the authentication steps, we are going to do this in a separate file with authentication. It's the name of the file, and it's going to be placed in the steps folder that we have just created. And we are going to use Python and Behave to implement it. If we click OK, we can see that we have now these steps implementation available here with the template for the implementation of the first step. We can also do the same for the second one. As you can see now, it's no longer marked in yellow. We can do the same for the other one that is related with authentication, the iLogin. And we create it into the same file, authentication. So now we can see that we have both steps. And in our case, what we're going to use is the implementations that are available from the tutorial. We will replace the template that we have right now with that implementation. And we are also going to add the kind of mechanism that we are going to use to match the steps implementations with the text in the corresponding scenarios. We are going to use parse as the option, because it's more convenient in order to place the names of the parts that we want to be placeholders. Okay, so in this case, what we are attaining is that this step that previously was just picking a particular username, user and password, for instance, that is what we have in the corresponding step. We want to make a generic step that uses these as variables. So whatever we type in the step here is provided as input to the function implementing the step. So this way we will be able of reusing this step implementation to create any kind of user with the username and password that we wish, because the code inside will be just reused based on these variables. In this case, it's really simple. What we are doing in order to satisfy that precondition, that is that there is a user with a particular username and password, is just to use the user model provided by Django and creating a new instance with the given username and the given password. And we are going to, for the moment, just keep a default email for all of them. And then we also have the implementation for the second step, the iLogin as user with a particular username of a particular password. And in this case, the implementation of the step that also uses variables, so we will be able to log in as any kind of user that is previously registered, or also even try to attempt to log in with a user that doesn't exist, and we can also check that in a different scenario. The idea here is that what we are doing inside the step is to perform through the user interface all the required interactions to perform the login. We do this directly through the user interface because what we want to check is that end-to-end our application is behaving as expected. As you can see, in this case, we are using, and it's provided through the context, the browser that we previously prepared when we prepared the environment for testing, and we will use that object to force the browser that we are going to use to interact with the application in an automated way to browse a particular page. In this case, what we want to do is to go to the accounts login page. That is a typical page in Django where we perform the login, where the login form is usually available. And we are also providing a next, because after we log in, we want to go back to the My Restaurants application. Once we are in that page, what we expect is that we are able to look for a form. We pick the first form that is available in that page. Then we are filling in that form a field with the name username, with the username that is provided through the step, and also the password. And then finally, what we want to do is that automatically in the browser, the login button is clicked. So we look for a login button, pick the first one. If there are more than one, we just pick the first and perform a click on it. With this, what we are attaining is that we are simulating in the user interface that these steps are performed and implemented. Okay, so the first thing that might happen in this case is that if we try to run these steps now, because now, as you can see, they are implemented, so they are no longer in green. So if we now look at the output of Behave, we will see that it's still complaining about the steps that are not yet implemented, and that it has executed one scenario and it failed. The rest are just the features that we have for the moment are empty. We can see now what's the output for that particular scenario. We can see that here at the beginning, the given exists a user with password has successfully completed. It was added to the database a new user with the credential that we have provided. But when I try to log in with that particular user, that step failed. And here we have the output. Why did this happen? And basically what it's complaining about is that we went to or tried to browse to accounts login, but it was not found, that page. So it was impossible, for instance, to search and locate the form to perform the login. And then the rest of the scenario was not, didn't continue, so it stopped here. So what we need to do now is to create that particular form and make it available at accounts login.